Two things of import on this intro. First off, the most important thing you can do for the next over 24 hours, 29 hours. Go to kalebhouse.org and donate. Super Donor is matching dollar for dollar every donation over $10. So if you actually want to help trafficked children, juveniles that have gone through hell, and you want to do a little bit more in something other than making movie stars and directors rich and sitting on your butt for 2 hours eating some popcorn, if you want to do something that makes a difference, donate by 8 p.m. tomorrow. Get it done. Leave a comment. Tell me you donated. I'll thank you personally. The other one, Yevgeny, whatever his name is, I knew it 5 minutes ago. We barely gave a damn about you. Rest in pieces. Man, I was going to do a video on connecting the dots with some of this trash that we're being told and a whole lot of the stuff that we see. But just going through news reports of today, there's more than I could even touch on. Welcome to the Opinionated Prepper. I'm Steve, and I need a nap. This stuff is terrible. You know, this isn't all going to be about the Wagner leader, you know, but I kind of want to start with this. You know, Prigozhin reported dead after Russian forces shoot down the plane. Wow, that's just hard to believe, huh, ladies and gentlemen? We didn't see that coming at all. I mean, we didn't see that he made some people mad and he was going to end up on the chopping block. They're not even hiding stuff anymore. But, you know, one might actually wonder why he just wasn't imprisoned and dealt with, you know, at the time that he was doing it. We still don't quite understand why it was that he got halfway to where he was going with nobody stopping him, and then he just decided to turn around and go back. You know, the excuse that he was giving, it just didn't really add up. You know, but thinking on a military point of view, at that point in time, Wagner, let's just say Wagner, the Wagner group, they were riled up, man. They were ready. They were going to storm the castle. They weren't going to be bothered. They felt that they got targeted by the Russian Air Force, and those people needed to pay. And if they weren't taken out of that position, then they were going to take over the whole country. You know, that was already right after the president and people offered for them to join the military. Now what happens? Prigozhin storms the castle, more or less, and they go back in and they tell all of the people following him, you've got two choices. You can either join the Russian military like you didn't want to before, or you can live in exile. You can leave and go to Belarus along with Yevgeny. You know, we don't know how many people, or at least I don't know, how many people joined the Russian military, how many people went in exile. But what I do know is they scattered, they were pulled apart. And when people are pulled apart or locked down or quarantined or isolated or kept in seclusion, it's very hard for them to come together and have a united front. And it just so happens that right after one of the guys, General Armageddon, as Popular Report likes to call him, right after he was fired, the plane blew up. And Yevgeny is no more. Just couldn't see that coming, huh? Man, I can't believe it. It's terrible. You know, but something that's worrying me, I needed to touch on that. You got your daily dose, so have at it. But something that is worrying me that's not really been talked about And you can find this more on the Economic Ninja. But that is the very important thing. The S&P downgrade of banks could make borrowing even tougher, ladies and gentlemen, and it's already kind of tough. You know, you go in to read the article, and it says that they've downgraded 5 U.S. banks. You know, and looking a little bit more into that, you can see that it's J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, PNC, I believe, yada, yada, yada. Those banks were directly influenced with Evergrande. They're getting hurt because of the bankruptcy protection and because they're going belly up, which means less money in their accounts. Has there been any problems with accessing your money through any of these banks? A glitch in the system? You know, the app, the website is down, please bear with us. Or your account is now frozen, you can't get your money out. Have you had a problem with it? I started speculating, I can't really prove this, but say hypothetically I'm correct, or there's even a chance that I'm correct. You know, you should run for the hills and think about pulling your money out, because I think if they're not already bankrupt, they're very, very close to being bankrupt. I think they're using the repo and the reverse repo, and they're using the overnight loans and everything to pay off the individual citizens like us. They're using the interest that they're gaining, and they're using loans, and they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's not a day-by-day thing anymore. It's starting to become a minute-by-minute thing, and it's starting to escalate. And with them getting their credit rating downgraded the second time, Moody's did it, now S&P's doing it, that means they're going to have to be paying higher interest. There's not going to be as many people willing to loan to them. So what if they don't have your money in the bank? What if they've lost it due to poor investments? And the only way that they have any money whatsoever to give you when you're trying to take cash out is to borrow money. And then they have to scrape by and do this and do that to barely be able to pay the interest back in the repo and such. What happens when they have to pay higher interest that they can't afford, or the lending institutions say, no, sorry, can't do it anymore? That means that the money they owe you is no longer available to them, which means your money is no longer available to them. And then you see long weekends and bank holidays, and you see glitches in the apps. Just speculation. That's all I'm saying. But it ties in and it correlates with this. Fall seed supplies could be tight if you're looking for seeds. Notes that normal certified seed wheat carryover runs about 800,000 bushels. This year it's only 183,000 bushels. And that makes new crop production all the more important. But what you're going to see because of this is higher prices. So where are the farmers going to get the extra money for these higher prices? They're going to try and borrow it. What happens if banks can't get money to loan you and credit tightens like they've been doing? You're not going to be able to get your seed. And it's already down. I think Canada is down from 33 to 26.2 million tons, and Russia has lost, I think, 13 point something million tons. If you want to hear a little bit more about it, and you want to hear somebody that I think has the same way of thinking that I do, check out David Dubine. Check out Adapt 2030. I think about 5 days ago he did a video, Crops and Meteors or something like that, And he touches on this, and he touches about the shortage of wheat and barley that's coming out, added to the shortage of last year and the year before and the year before, and how durum wheat, terrible. A few months ago, the Italian government talked about pasta shortages and raising prices because durum wheat and blah blah blah, and they said that planting is going to be very hard for the winter for those crops. You know, it's something to really look at, and it's got me bothered because nobody's really reporting on it. And what I was going to do a video on about what bugs me was noticing that I've only seen 1 or 2 bees this year. Generally, I have to chase away hornets and wasps, and they're building on every corner of my house. And I check in the windows and I can see them building the nests. And I have a problem with a whole bunch of ants coming through, and who doesn't in the south? And you're putting up little traps and everything like that. I didn't have to do that this year. I've seen maybe 3 wasps. They're not building any nests or anything like that. Hornets I haven't seen any of, but I haven't seen any honeybees either. I've seen 1 hummingbird, haven't seen very many butterflies at all. I've seen maybe 2 dragonflies this entire season. Well, where are you getting at, Steve? What I'm getting at is, other than my tomatoes, I had a very, very bad crop yield this year. My harvest is terrible. It's not worth doing anything with. The lack of pollinators made it impossible. Last year and the year before, picking strawberries was a nuisance for me. I had so many I didn't know what to do with. This year, I didn't get 1 single strawberry. They started to come out, they got really, really small, and then they just died. No pollinators anywhere, no anything. So if it's the same for next year, I'm going to have to look at pollinating them myself, which is something that you need to learn to do. But when I go in and I look, last year there was an article about how AI is now taking the place of pollinators. You know, because that same year they said 48.9% of the honeybee populations for the farmers that kept bees, the beekeepers, 48.9% of their bees collapsed. They died. So AI is looking to take over. When you have very high loans and an extreme shortage of seed, and you don't have any money, and if you do have a little bit of money to get things going, there is nothing, no insects around to pollinate. Then you have drought or flood or cold or heat or extreme wind or hurricanes, tornadoes, and such. You don't get a harvest. But leave it to AI to be able to pollinate for you. But do you know of very many farmers, at least on a local level, that can afford those types of tools? AI, the little robots, being able to do anything like that. And say you're taking a mortgage out, say you're taking a loan out on your farmland because you need collateral, because a lot of these farmers do short-term loans. They get a loan for their seed and everything they need, then they plant them, and then they sell it at harvest time, and their crop allows them to pay off their loan, and then whatever they have left, they get to live on. But say your customers are drying up, like Mexico, you know, say that your crop's terrible and you don't have a crop to come in this year. Say, if you can get a loan, the interest rates are quite a lot higher than what they were last year and the year before. Say that the value of land and the commodities and the value of your property is deflating, and your farmland isn't worth as much as what it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even this last year. It is a perfect storm brewing when it comes to farming. But don't worry. Bill Gates and all of the other billionaires can come and buy your land off you. It can now belong to BlackRock. And either you can stay on the property and turn into a sharecropper and work for them but still live in your house, or you can just get the money and you can just go rent a house somewhere in the city and they'll take over for you. And they're more than happy to introduce AI and have it precise, so they can sell to the stores and they can sell genetically modified, and they can have ranches to where they synthesize meat and the likes. So we're dependent on them. Well, I'll just grow my own food, you might say. Well, a lot of homesteaders and a lot of preppers are saying grow your own food, grow your own food. And as I said in previous videos, I agree with them. But what happens when all of your pollinators are gone? And what happens when it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry to grow your food? The only thing that you can do is either go into your reserves or go into a store. And then you're subjecting yourself to high prices, to all of that chemical sludge that they have growing around in there, to synthesize food that you have no idea how it's going to be for your body. You're not going to have any other choice. And all of this kind of ties in and comes back. And I'm not going to lean a lot on this stuff. This is just a hypothetical. But before I get into it, even though I'm 15 minutes in, do me a favor and like and share and subscribe. Because I'm doing this for you, and since I do not have a conspiracy wall, I have to do it in my head. So just show me a little bit of love if you would. If you've already subscribed to me and you're liking, do me a favor and share it to people that might think the same as you, or to people that are on the verge but they think you're crazy. Say, okay, this guy's so crazy he actually makes sense. Listen to him. Maybe I can get through to him. Can't get through to anybody else, but maybe I can get through to him. But I want you to think of something like this. Say you mix food. Okay, they were last year saying if you have a community garden, you need to register it. Why would they need to know what communities are growing gardens? Just doesn't make any sense. But they said to register it. Now, I'm sure a lot of people raised a fuss about it, blowback. If they started outlawing it and making it physically dangerous for you to grow food, there would be an uprising. People would be outraged. They wouldn't take it. Okay, think of that. Keep that in the back of your head while I move on to this. For the last couple of years, although it's been better for the last few months, we've been seeing gun restriction, gun restriction, gun restriction, gun restriction. Could they do anything? Have they had any good luck with it? No. Why? Because if they take our freedoms for firearms, there will be an uprising, an outrage. There will be riots in the streets. They don't want that, because even though old Pinocchio Joe, old Pedo Pete, old, I can't remember all the pseudonyms that he used in the emails while he was vice president, and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit, but he says, let them come, we've got jets and we've got nuclear weapons. We've got 350 million strong there, Joey boy. So piss people off just enough. But they don't want that. I mean, they know that. They know that there is no chance if the country unites against a despot, against a dictator, against a tyrannical leader. They don't stand a chance. It'll be like the French Revolution all over again. Now, I'm not condoning that. I'm saying a hypothetical situation. If they start taking rights, enforcing this, imposing this, it was getting like that with lockdowns, and that was a year less. People were rioting in the streets and protesting, pretty dang quick because they were so tyrannical. But think about it, if the National Guard or the military comes in and rips your guns out of your house. And take one or two or three down just for good measure, just to show the other people what will happen if you resist. How much of an outcry will there be? Have people come in and take your food, or say you're not allowed to grow anything unless you pay a fine, or unless you pay a carbon tax, or unless you get a license to be able to do it, even in your own backyard, property that you are supposed to own. Think about the outcry and the public detest. Think what that would involve. Okay, last year and the year before, it's been better, but it's gotten worse. Where has the ammo gone? Well, the federal government, people that really, really, really need firearms, like the post office and the IRS, boy, those people need to be strapped. They were ordering a bunch. And since their main priority with the ammunition companies and stuff like that, there really wasn't enough for the public. Think about that. They cannot touch our rights and our freedoms and our firearms, but they can render them useless. If we don't have ammunition, now we just have a $2,000 rock. Say that they can't regulate farming. They just send all the pollinators away on a happy holiday. So you can grow, you have the right to grow all you want. It's just a shame that there's no pollinators and no fertilizers, and there's bad weather, and nothing comes up. The ground is barren. It's sterile. Sorry. You have the right to try all you want, but try as you may, it won't happen. I think that's where we're seeing the country going. It's not that we're going to see a tyrannical imposition and we're going to see martial law and barricades and everything, and we may. But they know that there's going to be resistance. So, take away our ability to exercise our rights. Who cares about having land if you can't grow anything? You're still dependent on the government. Who cares about having the freedom of cash and of private transactions and the freedom to work where you want to work? More indentured servitude than slavery. Who cares about that freedom if there are no jobs and there are no places around to patronize, to use your cash, and you have to go online to order stuff? So you need to have a card and digital money, and all the cash that you have, might be good toilet paper. Who cares about those rights when the ability to exercise those rights are gone? Who cares about the rights to a well-regulated militia and our rights to keep and bear arms when there is no ammunition? And I know a lot of you people are saying, well, we can make our own, we can reload, we can okay, to a certain point I can say okay, but sooner or later the brass gets wore out. Sooner or later you have to come up with more black powder, gunpowder, lead. You still have to buy the stuff to make the reloads. What if you can't get it? It's not just buying the ammunition itself. What if all of it's gone? You're going to make your own saltpeter? Most people don't know how to do that. Most people don't know how to make black powder. And even if they did, they wouldn't quite know how to use homemade black powder. And I'm sure a bunch of people be blowing their fingers off for the trial and error. So they're not going to want to do that. So, they're just going to grab their trusty 45, and it's just a beautiful paperweight. There's so many things right now that are just slipping away, and it's not the rights, it's the ability. What's the point of all of that stuff? all of the rich people and the billionaires, they have money to exercise their freedoms. They can use technology, they can use AI, they can use their influence from banks to get loans, to buy property, and all of that. You don't have it. I think Economic Ninja was talking about, the lower class just getting lower and lower and lower because our money is drying up, and the freedoms that they have access to, we can't even touch. So we're subjected, and we're forced to use a CBDC, and we're forced to do a gun buyback program because there's no ammunition, and what's the point of having it if we can't shoot it? Which opens up a whole lot more enforcement to us. We don't have the money to buy seeds. We become 100% dependent on the institutions, on the government, and their ability, and also in their Messiah-like generosity. They're there to protect us and to keep us warm and safe and everything like that. Okay. What happens if all this stuff in a few of the dystopian TV shows and everything, utilities are drying up, resources are drying up, so everything needs to be recycled. Anyone who has kids will know this belief and practice because they've done it. The oldest gets a new pair of shoes. The oldest outgrows the shoes, so the middle gets those shoes. He outgrows those shoes, so the youngest gets those shoes. But by the time the youngest gets those shoes, it's more duct tape than it is shoes. And then, they might throw it away, but think more along the lines of cutting it up and using all the resources you can. That will be like us. The richest will get the best and the biggest and the brightest and the most healthy and the best tasting and the most sunlight and the most temperate weather. And then the middle child, which is disappearing because the middle income family really isn't around anymore, they get the hand-me-downs and they get the leftovers of that. And then once it gets down to you and me, there's barely anything but some duct tape and a memory and a description of how good it was when it was brand new. So I'm thinking maybe you need to start preparing, and you need to start getting ready, and you need to start having contingency plans. The best way to survive, the best way to weather any storm is with knowledge. Knowledge gives you options. That's why they're twisting the knowledge and restricting it. We don't know the same things that we knew 100 years ago, and they didn't know the same things they knew 200 years ago, and so on and so on. We don't know how to do anything. I mean, most people don't even know what a gasifier is now, when 70 years ago FEMA was dropping pamphlets telling people how to make gasifiers because there was a fuel shortage and because the fuel was going to the war and everything like that. During the Great Depression, people were converting their tractors and their cars and all that to gasifier technology. Most people have never heard that word before. Maybe start downloading some plans, understand the concept of gasification, how to do it and how to do it correctly before all of that information gets taken off the internet. Maybe while you're growing food, you learn aquaponics. You build and dedicate a room for an indoor grow house. You learn how to self-pollinate. You get a hold of other local farmers, and to keep the community strong, you start buying up as much of that natural food as you can and learn how to preserve it for as long as you can. So that way, years and years and years after all of the land is barren and you can't grow anything and everything in the store is synthesized, you still have some natural fruits and vegetables and meat in your pantry because you preserved it. The Best Buy date hasn't always been a thing. It just happened a few decades ago, and even this last year, because all of the stuff was held on cargo ships and past the Best Buy date, they were coming out saying, no, that doesn't really mean anything. Don't worry about that. You can eat food that's past the Best Buy date. So when they were recommending it when it was good for them, they were trying to dissuade people when it was bad for them. So don't put much trust or faith. Kind of like how CNN and everybody now, which is another thing I have to talk about in another day because it's getting too long. CNN is coming out now talking about all of the pseudonyms that Biden had during his vice presidency when he was communicating and getting money from China and Ukraine, and how when he was debating Trump and he said that his son made no money off of Ukraine and China, in 2017, 2018, between those two, he made like almost $5 million. And it's coming out now. And CNN actually said something that I never thought I would hear them say. Trump was right, Biden was wrong. That goes with yesterday's message about the Associated Press being unbiased and not putting a liberal spin on it. Why are these left-leaning, uber-douche, mainstream media corporations completely going away from the liberals, going more towards a middle stance, and sometimes favorably for conservative? Why now? You need to think about that stuff. But regardless, now's the point of the show where I say all of the public service announcements. Not really a whole lot. Just do me a favor, like, share, subscribe. I will say one thing though, and I'll do another intro, so it'll be okay. But donate to Kaleb House. Bear independent. Completely necessary, completely vital. If you got a visceral feeling because of the sound of freedom and you wanted to do something about it, and you thought you were doing something about it by dishing out $20 to go sit down and watch a movie that just made you feel so frustrated, go to Kaleb House. They have a super donor until 8 p.m. tomorrow night, and that super donor is willing to match every donation. Every dollar of donations that are $10 or more, that super donor is going to match. So there is a chance for them to make some big money helping with construction and the everyday need of supporting these juvenile trafficked children that need help and need a leg up. Operating costs must be astounding. And instead of making directors rich and actors rich and producers and writers rich, and they already are rich, start helping for a community, for a group, for an organization that needs it. KalebHouse.org. Do it before tomorrow night. That's the public service announcement for today. I'm not worried about anything else. If you want to get a hold of me, if you want to know what I support, what social platforms I'm on, and what social platforms and what coffee and what everything else and books and blah 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 that I suggest that you try out, go to another video. Don't even have to watch it all. Just look in the description or wait till the end. That's it. But Kaleb House, the most important thing you can do for the next 2 days. If you do it, I thank you greatly. If you do, mention it down in my comments. Let's find out how many people actually are helping instead of just saying, man, I wish there's something I could do. Leave me a comment saying, I donated, I helped. I'll read them out. I thank you, and God willing, we'll see you tomorrow.